My parents always favored my sister, so when my grandfather left me a $500,000 inheritance, they tried to take it away and give it to her. But what they didn't realize was that my grandparents had already accounted for their schemes. I'm to 8M, and I come from a family with a long, messy history of favoritism. My parents, especially my dad, have always put my younger sister, Amy 25F, on a pedestal. It started when we were kids and only got worse as we got older. From the very beginning, Amy was the golden child. When I was 5 and she was 2, my parents threw her an extravagant birthday party, complete with a bouncy castle, a petting zoo, and professional face painters. For my birthday that same year, a small family dinner and a store-bought cake. That set the tone for the years to come. As we grew up, the favoritism became painfully obvious. Amy got the newest toys, the best clothes, and the most attention. I remember saving my allowance for months to buy a new bike when I was 10. Amy saw it, threw a tantrum, and instead of teaching her about patience, my parents bought her a newer, better bike the very next day. School wasn't any different. They attended every one of Amy's school events, but often forgot or skipped mine. In 4th grade, I had the lead role in the school play. I practiced for weeks, thrilled for them to see me perform. But on the night of the show, they arrived an hour late, missing my big scene. Their excuse, Amy had a stomach ache. I later found out she was fine. They had just lost track of time while playing with her. No matter what I did, it was never enough. I got straight A's, won competitions, and even earned a place at a prestigious summer program at Harvard. When I shared the news at dinner, my dad grunted and changed the subject to Amy's upcoming dance recital. My mom gave me a half-hearted "that's nice" before moving on. The night of Amy's recital happened to be the same night I was flying out for Harvard. They refused to drive me to the airport because they didn't want to miss her performance. I had to ask a friend's parents for a ride. College applications were no different. I worked tirelessly to get into a top university and secured a major scholarship. When I told my parents, their reaction was lukewarm at best. My dad just said, "That's good, but don't let it go to your head." Meanwhile, when Amy barely graduated high school and decided not to go to college, they praised her for knowing herself and not conforming to societal pressures. They even bought her a car as a graduation present, something they never did for me. This constant favoritism took a toll on me emotionally. I struggled with depression and anxiety, but therapy helped me realize that my parents' behavior wasn't my fault. Despite their lack of support, I built a good life for myself. I graduated with honors, landed a solid job in finance, and bought my own house at 27. I'm proud of what I've achieved even if my parents don't acknowledge it. Then the inheritance drama began. My grandfather, my dad's father, passed away recently. He had built a fortune from nothing and left behind a significant estate. His will divided his assets equally among his children and grandchildren, which meant I received an inheritance of about $500,000. It was life-changing. I could pay off my student loans, invest in my future, and maybe even start my own business someday. But when the will was read, my parents were furious. Afterward, they pulled me aside and told me they thought it was unfair. They insisted Amy needed the money more because she was struggling. She worked part-time at a coffee shop and still lived in their basement. I was stunned but stayed calm. I reminded them that this was Grandpa's decision, not mine, but they wouldn't let it go. They said I should do the right thing and give my share to Amy. When I refused, they turned to guilt-tripping. My dad started listing off the times they had supported me, like paying for my braces, which were medically necessary, or letting me live at home during college even though I worked part-time and paid rent. Conveniently, he forgot about the car they bought Amy, the endless shopping sprees, and the fact that they still financially support her at 25. Then my dad took it a step further. As the executor of the will, he decided to take matters into his own hands. He announced that he was going to reinterpret Grandpa's wishes and give my entire share to Amy on top of the inheritance she already received. He claimed Grandpa would have wanted it that way if he had known our situations. I was devastated. Not only was this illegal, but it was also another painful reminder of how little they valued me. I pointed out that Grandpa had always treated all his grandkids equally and was fully aware of our circumstances. My mom fired back, accusing me of speaking ill of the dead, just because I wouldn't go along with their plan. Amy, for her part, stayed quiet. When I asked her privately if she thought this was fair, she just shrugged. Mom and Dad know best. At that point, I knew I needed help. I reached out to my Grandpa's widow and told her everything. She was furious. It turned out my parents had already tried to manipulate Grandpa's will years ago. They had asked him to leave everything to Amy, but he had refused, believing in fairness. To protect his wishes, he even included a clause in the will. Anyone who contested the equal distribution would forfeit their share. Armed with this information, I confronted my parents. They were stunned. My dad fumbled through excuses, saying they were just looking out for Amy's future, but the guilt was all over their faces. Grandma wasted no time. She got her lawyer involved, alerted the other executors of the will, and even called my dad's siblings. Everyone was outraged. With the entire family against them, my parents had no choice but to back down. The will was executed as written, and I received my rightful inheritance. But my parents weren't done. They were livid that I turned the family against them. They said I should have handled it privately, as if they hadn't tried to steal from me first.